if they lie about it, that can be a problem. So as you approach, my best advice is as you approach the legislative process here in Austin, things shouldn't take you by surprise and things shouldn't be misleading. To the extent that they are misleading, to the extent something does take you by surprise, you should raise that to someone like me or with a representative, assuming that they're kind of on the same side of the aisle with you on whatever issue you're concerned about. I would be remiss, and that's, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the state's lobby laws. When you come to Austin as citizens to speak on issues that you care about, you're not a lobbyist. I think a lot of people have this misconception, oh, I'm going to go for a lobby day, or I'm going to be a citizen lobbyist, I'm going to be a taxpayer lobbyist. No, you're an engaged citizen engaging in your First Amendment rights to petition government. A lobbyist is a hired gun. A lobbyist is a person who builds relationships and then essentially sells those relationships to an outside third party to advocate on their behalf. Nothing wrong with that, but that's something entirely different than each of you coming here to talk about some issue that you care about. That said, whenever you come to Austin and you're effective in talking about issues and shining a light on government, sometimes they don't like it. And so I do want to take you very briefly through the state's lobby law, and not through it, but a couple points about it. The only ways that a person is classified as being a quote-unquote lobbyist is if they're paid to be here or if they spend money to be here other than on their own travel. And so my best advice, first of all, is if you're being paid, if for some reason, like let's say your boss said, yeah, I really want you to go to that, take the day off, you keep your pay, I want you to come here, you should come talk to a guy like me, an attorney, and we'll hash out whether, what your situation really is. If you're not getting paid, you really don't have to worry about that thing. The second part of it is people feel the need, they see lobbyists, buying lunches, buying dinners, doing those things, so they think, well, if I want to go talk to my representative, I need to show up with a plate of fajitas, and we'll talk about things over the plate of fajitas, and suddenly that'll make me more effective. You'll hear from other presenters this morning, that's not necessary in order to be effective in the legislative process. Go with a genuine conviction, a genuine story, and you'll be fine. But I really would urge, don't give free things to legislators or legislative staff. You can very quickly get yourself in hot water by passing certain thresholds. So just generally don't do that. Finally, I'll close with a little point about process and where we're at in the process. Bill filing has closed. All the bills that are going to be filed, with certain very limited exceptions, have been filed. So to the extent that you have the best idea in the history of the world, it's probably going to have to wait until 2017 to actually get filed if you can get somebody to buy into that concept. But there is this idea, and Michael brought this up last week and asked me about it, the concept of an amendment to a bill on the floor. And I'll take a really good example, a really high-profile example of this. Some people are big advocates of what's called constitutional carry. Unlicensed, unregulated carry of a firearm pursuant to the Second Amendment. That's one point of view. What is moving in the legislature are these bills that deal with licensed open carry. And so there's been this push to say, well, let's put an amendment on the House floor, on the Senate floor, onto a bill so that we can get a vote on this constitutional carry issue that we all care about. And that is possible, certainly possible, but you can't do it with just any bill. You're not going to be able to do that with some piece of legislation. Just because it deals with firearms or carrying a firearm doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to put in this broad expansion of carry rights like you would with potentially an amendment to the actual licensed carry bill. In my opinion, you can do it with the big bill that they're moving. You probably can't do it with something that tinkers around the edges. The reason for that is that we have certain rules in this state that protect, that keep bills limited to a single subject. You all are familiar with Washington, D.C., and there'll be the bill moving forward to fund the troops and to do something like that, and then all of a sudden we're slipping teapot museums and all kind of crazy stuff into that bill. You really can't do that under our state constitution and under our process. It's a very, very good thing, but it does limit what you can do on the floor. Can't have a bill with 2 subjects, can't have a bill with 3 or 4 or 5 subjects. Now, can't have a very broad subject. Sometimes you'll see a bill that deals with, like, there's a bill dealing with everything having to do with health and human services right now. So that's a super broad 2,300-page bill. That's just one giant topic. But it's still going to be limited to one topic. We couldn't put something in there related to, you couldn't put that concealed carry or constitutional carry limit onto that thing. And on the same ground, to protect that concept of one purpose, one subject to a bill, you just can't go in and add something that doesn't have to do with the measure at hand to it, even if it relates to the same general subject or relates to the section of code that's being amended. Well,
so who determines that?
Yeah, so the process is this, and there's a broad misconception about who determines that. A person, let's say a member brings an amendment. Obviously, if nobody objects, then they'll just vote it up or down. But let's say someone brings a point of order and says, and Mr. Speaker, point of order, Rule 11, Section 2, this is a violation of the germaneness rules for amendments. You go down, the parliamentarian, largely, the House employs a parliamentarian. I don't know if you ever watched the dais. The speaker is up there, and whoever's in the dais, even if it isn't the speaker, is up there, and he's got this guy kind of whispering in his ear, telling him what to say. And that guy actually knows what all the words are. And he's kind of telling Strauss or whoever it is what to do. That's been true of every speaker. The parliamentarian, a lot of times, in a practical sense, is the one who has background knowledge about the parliamentary procedure and precedent to kind of make a recommendation. The speaker himself ultimately rules. So he could override or he could take conflicting advice. Let's say the parliamentarian says, well, I don't know, this one's a tough question. Here's some precedent that says that it is germane. Here's some precedent that says it's not germane. The speaker could say, yay or nay. But it doesn't actually stop there. It's a big misconception to say that either the parliamentarian or the speaker determines a point of order. Ultimately, the members of the body have the power to determine what the rules mean and how they're to operate. Because there's a mechanism, if the speaker says, I sustain the point of order or overrule it, there's a mechanism, I believe by 10 signatures, for members to appeal that decision to the body. The speaker then would vacate the chair and put somebody else in. There'd be a short debate, and the question would be, should the speaker be sustained? And you would have a vote of the body, and it would be whichever, 76, 74, whichever set of the members, whatever they agree with. And to some extent, that could be like a vote on the bill. It could be it's essentially a vote on the legislation. But they have to keep in mind that whatever they're doing potentially is setting precedent for the future. So it would be a bad idea to just abuse the rules because you have 76 votes. That could morph the rules into something that you don't want them to be by setting very, very bad precedent. On the flip side, they could, if it's a gray area and they think they agree or disagree with the point of order, then they take that position and see what the result comes out. So ultimately, long answer to a short answer is the members technically decide that question. With that, any other questions that people have? Yes?
On the CDL, on the open carry, in the House, it was heard a week ago, and now it's in finished. Can you tell us what this really means?
Okay, the standard practice, you shouldn't be alarmed by this. Some people are a little bit alarmed. They'll go to a hearing and they support a bill and they have a good hearing on the bill, and then the chairman of the committee says, all right, well, we'll leave HB 555 pending, and they move on. And you're going, wait a second, aren't you guys supposed to vote on this? Aren't you supposed to do something with it? They're allowed to vote on it the day of the hearing. I mean, they definitely can vote. They can have the hearing, everybody has their say, and then immediately vote. That almost never ever do that. The most frequent thing is to have a hearing and then have a vote a week later. But sometimes you get more delay than that. And sometimes they never get a vote at all because the chairman, just doesn't want to move the bill. And that's kind of its own problem. But I wouldn't worry too much about it, particularly 1 week's delay. That's very, very, very typical. Any other questions? All right. Well, I'm not sure who's next, but I will open it up for, Emily Kemba.